Welcome to the Futures Ventures podcast on Scaling with Clarity. On today's podcast episode, we're joined by Omar Sahyoun. Omar is a serial entrepreneur and a technology operator with a deep background in e-commerce, fintech, and retail infrastructure. He first became widely known as the co-founder of TeamBuy and DealFind, two of Canada's earliest and largest daily deal platforms, which collectively scaled to more than 4 million members. Since then, he has worked across digital banking, merchant finance, and commerce technology, including leadership roles at Ariel and Purpose Financial. Today, Omar is focusing on building and scaling brand effects. In brand effects portfolio are companies such as Shoply, Wack Jack, and Go CXM. I'm super excited about this conversation and kind of unpack what lies ahead for CPG brands and how AI is enabling this. Omar, welcome to the stage. I'm super excited for the conversation because you're really at the coal's edge, at the front lines in terms of what's happening in CPG and how do big brands get in front of consumers. So why don't we start off by
thank you for having me.
For those that don't know who Omar is, which is probably not very many people that don't know, but like for those that don't, who is Omar? How did you come to do what you're doing?
So it's a good question. I think it's there's been a 2 decades of building different call it careers or companies, but I think in the last few years I finally found the perfect intersection of past experience, which ultimately we do in our 20s and 30s, and then figure it out later in our 40s and later on, and zoom in on what we think we're good at. So, as you laid out a bit of my background, not to bore the audience with the details, but my career started essentially as a very boring accounting out of university. I was an internal auditor for a big corporate conglomerate around the world. And later on, I moved over to management consulting down in the US, so a subsidiary of Boston Consulting Group, where we focused on mid-tier companies, some public, some private, but really focused on CPG. So that combination, call it, of accounting and management consulting, which is a mix of finance and strategy, et cetera, was very, very helpful in establishing a quantitative approach to business. Is just looking at business through numbers. But I always had a creative side or a passion, or at least I thought I am a creative guy. So I got into my first startup in 2009, which was TeamBuy, as you mentioned, and it was back then it was almost fashionable to build a marketplace or an e-commerce company. Fast forward 7-8 years, that world kind of crashed. But the learnings from building a company, obviously, raising a lot of money from VCs, from private equity, but more importantly, call it the foundation of e-commerce, gives you something that is harder to replicate in a brick-and-mortar setting, because you can measure everything. So as a numbers guy, as I mentioned, I learned a lot on what a cost of acquisition is, what LTV and why it matters. So how to really spend your dollars and measure and be accountable for a return. And this is in a time where, 2009, 2010, these were early, I wouldn't say early stages of e-commerce, but really early enough where everybody was learning together. And there was a collaboration amongst the startup world. So I learned a lot. Years later, I moved on to fintech, as you mentioned, with the Ariel platform, which was a digital banking and digital lending platform. Again, this is around 2016, where lending online was a new concept. adjudicating a person loan or a business, in a matter of, same day approval was a big deal. It's very commoditized today, but back then it was a big deal. So why the shift is because it was a new market, a massive market, and a new one to disrupt. But I did believe that all the learnings from e-commerce and building a marketplace, which is essentially what? It's getting consumers to sign up to your website and go make a purchase.
Yeah.
Conceptually, lending online follows a similar flow, or at a minimum, the similar KPIs. Cost of acquisition, and you want a consumer or business. In Ariel's case, we did business lending, to onboard on your platform and trust you enough to provide some of the deepest questions you can ask someone is their financial background, and then get a loan from you, which is a purchase. So it's the same path. And back in 2016, a lot of people from e-commerce got into digital lending because that was the cohort of startup entrepreneurs that understood how to build a business online, how to get people to. So again, that timing was great, and it was a new adventure. So appetite for learning. I knew nothing about finance and lending, but that's the part you learn. But I think I had the asset that my partners and investors in that venture appreciated, an operational background, but also an understanding for marketplace tactics. Years later, we exited that business, and I kind of missed, the e-commerce world. It's a very different crowd, the fintech and e-commerce, very different kind of people you deal with, etc. And I did miss a little bit of that world. But this was around 2020 when COVID was coming in place. So it wasn't about getting back into e-commerce, which, by the way, companies thrived in e-commerce, but I wanted to have a slightly different angle. And I think that's part of the focus that, we'll get to brand effects, that is really finding a white space, not doing what others are doing, but finding a parallel and a white space where you can actually disrupt better. You can, get in early, and you can maybe pioneer something. And that's where, Shoply came to place, which is the first of the three companies that we'll get into. And the rationale there was twofold. One is COVID's happening. A lot of people are buying more online. The rise of e-commerce was evident. Before COVID, it's a stat I always kind of mind is, 80% of commerce was still done in a brick and mortar setting, face to face. You went to the store, you bought something, you went to the grocery store. And I think the stat remains today around 70%. So,
wow, that's significant.
This whole rise of commerce in COVID, it looks great. But the reality is the majority of the world, whether it's 65 or 70, it's the majority of the world is still conducting commerce, specifically in retail, face to face. So how do you apply all these e-commerce notions that make e-commerce amazing? And how do you bring that to a brick and mortar setting? And the focus was always, SMBs. If you think about the path, it's always that I've had, it was always around SMB. The daily deal space catered to SMBs and consumers. Ariel, which was a digital lending platform, was for SMBs. So that was an area that I know well. I mean, growing up, I grew up in the franchise world. My family had various franchises, from Burger King to CompuCenter, which was a store before Best Buy took over, Second Cup. So I worked in all these, small franchises and different roles, and it's something I know well. So it made sense to build a business that brought e-commerce concepts. And what do I mean by e-commerce concepts? It's, better loyalty, personalization. How do you treat a customer with better knowledge? How do you retarget a customer? Your traditional brick and mortar store may not have the tools or knowledge to get into these concepts, which are very easy online. But, an average restaurant or retail store, and I'm talking about your traditional mom and pop store, they have a point of sale, they have a payment terminal. Maybe they're a little more sophisticated because they use Shopify. They may have a CRM and have a knowledge on their customers, maybe a loyalty program. But just by describing what I just did, those are individual siloed tools. So you have to get 5 different subscriptions, to achieve all that. So Shoply came in and said, well, how about we put all that under one roof? So, you're not essentially viewing a customer as a transaction, which is what the point of sale world has traditionally been, doing. And how do you treat that customer like a relationship? How does that customer come in, have a better experience shopping, using their cell phone, for example, scanning things off the shelf, building a shopping cart, just like you build an Uber Eats, order. But in doing so, how does a salesperson know who Omar is if he's a repeat customer? I'm scanning a QR code. Now I'm in the loyalty program in the setting of the store. A sales rep can come say, hey, Omar, welcome back. How did you like those jeans you bought last month? We have a special on our latest collection. Would you like to look at it? Why? Because that's seeing what I'm looking for. They have visibility, but in real time. It's not in some CRM where business owner or the marketing manager is, giving a post kind of post analysis. It's real time, and real time is everything we were focused on. But equally as important, I buy something and I leave the store. How does that store stay in touch with me? How do they send me an SMS a week later talking about some new promotion or asking me my feedback, which is also very important. So as you can see, these are all concepts that did exist, but restaurants is another division. We had very fragmented. A typical restaurant that's somewhat sophisticated has to buy 5 pieces of software to achieve what Shoply did in one. And mobile first, and a lot of, call it the modern way of shopping. And that was truly inspired by COVID. I just kind of knew that consumers would be growingly accustomed to the convenience of e-commerce. That's really what it's very convenient. But once COVID would end, well, you got spoiled customers because they shopped more online during lockdown years, but then the world would kind of come back to the same. And in fact, it has. And that's where I go back to saying, well, the majority of business is still conducted in a brick and mortar setting. So that was the Shoply story. We then
can I just double click on Shoply for a second? Omar, I'm just curious, which Shoply, I mean, you're spot on. A lot of transactions or a lot of the customer relationship is very transactional. You don't have information on them. We work with a lot of hospitality clients, and it's the same. It's kind of like, how do you get to know them? We've partnered up with Cisco, delivering to their Cisco Hospitality Summit, and this is very, very, very much the case in terms of how do you get to know, how do you personalize the relationship. We've published recently a report on the future of restaurants, and the things you're describing are spot on. So do you have a stat in terms of like how you turn a transactional relationship into a customer relationship, and what value like Shoply unlocks? Like, I'm just use case. Give me a use case.
Yeah, I'll give you some KPIs even. I think even more interesting use case because these are results, right? We found out over the years that by switching over to Shoply, your average order value does increase by 20%. Why? Is that personalization. So let's go, you talked about hospitality. If, when I'm walking into a restaurant, I'm scanning a QR code, pulling up a menu, which is standard, right? But why not do more with that? That menu allows you to order, but we're not necessarily focused on self-ordering. Why? It eliminates jobs. We're actually here to help staff do better at their job, not eliminate them. So I'm scanning that QR code. Again, I'm a repeat customer is the ideal scenario. And a server now knows that table 51, there's someone there. Omar's sitting at that table. And last time Omar was here, he ordered a dirty martini for his steak. So I know that Omar likes a dirty martini. He's not vegetarian. So when I'm approaching that table, I'm immediately like Omar's a VIP in the eyes of the staff, because whether I've met you or not, I'm going to offer you a dirty martini. I'm going to talk about the steak specials and not the vegetarian special. I'm being very specific in this case study, but overall it's about personalization. So what does that do? Better service, average order value increases. The second one is convenience. There are certain things where you don't need a staff member. Let's stick to hospitality. I'm mid-meal and I just want a second beer. I know I'm talking a lot about alcohol, but so do you really need to wait on your server to order that beer? Not really. You can do that yourself. So now there's convenience. And what that does is stat number 2 is there's about a 40 to 50% higher turnover rate in, call it the Shoply world. What that means is you can serve double the capacity with the same staff. And customers remain happy because you're not chasing around the server. That's number 2. Number 3 is a 2 to 3x repeat business from the same customer. That's done through our retargeting mechanism. There's a proactive communication that happens, and that's how you build the relationship. Once I leave the store, talk to me again, bring me back. So those are kind of 3 stats, 3 case studies that we have seen, and we monitor. We monitor to our 250 plus customers and growing kind of across the board, because that helps us improve our product.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
A third one, and I can keep going, but I'll stop at this fourth one. Sorry, is the data. The data is very valuable in the way we present it. We simplify it and we present it. And again, we have AI agents that support, obviously not in the early years, but more and more. And what that does is it just gives you better recommendations on how to do marketing. Let's say you're, advertising through promotions and discounts, let's say, which is very common. There might be a subset of people that, you'd be leaving money on the table if you do offer them a 10% to come back, because they come back every week, or vice versa. Identifying who hasn't come in a while and used to order, spend a lot, and maybe give them a different campaign than another group of or segment of customers. It's just not throwing a fish net. It creates more personalization, but it's also, some of our features are, for example, scan and go, where you can scan things off the shelf. Amazon did it for Whole Foods and at a very big scale. Really what that does is give us information on who's browsing, e-commerce type information, but it's equally as important to know why someone may have added something to a cart and removed it. You scan something, but you don't buy it. So e-commerce, that's called shopping cart abandonment. Brick and mortar, you have no idea because I took something off the shelf, then I put it back. So doing it digitally gives you more depth.
That makes sense. Do you want to talk about the other company before we jump in, kind of like what you see in terms of the evolution of commerce these days?
Sure thing. So Wack Jack is company number 2. We actually acquired that one years ago for 2 reasons. One, it's a background that I know very well, but also added there's millions of Canadian consumers. It's a 15-year-old company, great reputation. It used to be owned by Toronto Star and then sold to another public company called Emerge Commerce. So it was an established business, a million plus customer base. So being in retail, I think it was cool to get into a business that actually touched so many Canadian consumers. And not to say it's incorporated deeply with Shoply, but again, it expands its portfolio. Now we have retail technology, we have consumer technology or consumer marketplace. The third company was founded and supported by myself from inception, from a partner of mine who had a lot of success in a previous life and a family office. And really that company is focused on major brands, so CPG. And that company is called Go CXM. Go CXM has 2 divisions. One is a marketing division that works with these major brands that traditionally sell in retail stores, grocery stores, but don't necessarily have a direct contact with consumers, just because historically that's how the world works. The retailer owns the customer relationship, but CPG brands are increasingly interested in communicating directly with customers. Regardless of how supply chain works, it's just having that direct access. That's really what that division does. It's called customer activation. You're spending millions of dollars in grocery stores and events and concerts, wherever you are. Why wouldn't you capture zero and first party data? Why wouldn't you send surveys? Why wouldn't you start connecting and offering promotions and contests, and, trips to FIFA and free tickets to engage consumers with your brand? So that's one division. The second division is what you call the trade execution or retail compliance. So that one is a platform focused on supporting reps of these major CPG brands to ensure that their merchandising and the various promotions in stores are executed to the specific compliance of a brand. When you're talking about hundreds of thousands of stores, our clients are in the US and Canada. We have some of the biggest names that work with us. They, one of our larger clients has 30,000 sales reps across the US who have to go around different stores and make sure that the compliance of a stand they may have paid $100,000 to Walmart to be placed up front. Is it all there? Are you out of stock? So digitizing that process, and again, real-time analytics, real-time visibility on how to fix it through AI agent, but also reporting to head office is key in that business.
Wow. That's amazing. Like we have portfolio companies that could use these products, and we're seeing these challenges. And so one of the things that we have always been wondering, like the 2 problems we've been scratching our head in terms of how to solve is how to merge the physical with a virtual persona into one. It sounds like you're doing some of this. And the other one is because like one of the companies we own is Vino. Vino is a wine import company. And so we don't own the relationship, right? You're going through, in this case, is the government is the distributor, DHL is the distributor, but the government, and then you have a retailer, you have on-premise or off-premise. We don't own the relationship. We sell to the wholesale buyers, but we don't own we can't control it. We can do chef talkers, we can do different things, but we don't own the relationship. So we've always been like, how do I get to talk to the customers? So I'm quite excited to learn more about this, because I think this could be a solution we can definitely leverage.
Absolutely. We've worked with a lot of liquor brands, actually, historically, from Diageo to the LCBO directly. And really, you said it best, is how do you connect digital and off? How do you recognize that person as one across the board? And it's called omni-channel, but again, it's easier said than done, because what we try to do is create a toolbox, okay? A toolbox that essentially gives a reason to the consumer to give their information. Right, a minimum, tell us, hey, you can talk to us. The obvious ways are, giving them something in return and an incentive, but there's a tech behind it, right? And then keeping that communication alive is very important. And in fact, it's not just the marketing side, but the whole retail execution side has to connect to the marketing, because you're spending a lot of money to drive a customer to a location, but maybe it's out of stock. Well, you know it's out of stock because the retailer's in charge of stocking the shelves. So why would you spend all these dollars in the wrong area? Because it's so there's a link.
Curious. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the company. It's a Vancouver-based company. They used to be called something else. Recently went through a rebrand. They're a publicly traded company listed on the exchange, I think, a couple of years ago. What they had developed is like a device that attaches to the POS in order to be able to kind of marry that, create this omni-channel. Like, is Shoply and Go CXM interrelated, interconnected in some ways in terms of enriching the customer profile?
So that's a great question. It was intended to originally by design, but admittedly, the opportunities at Go and the opportunities at Shoply did not necessarily intersect. And all these are concepts, but at the end of the day, running a business is still important, right? So you can have plans, they don't always go through. There has been instances where they did interconnect, but Shoply's path ended up being in hospitality and apparel, retail, and cannabis as a specific sector, because it has its own difficulties. Whereas Go CXM's path and very major names have brought us to grocery, gas stations, events, anything from F1 to Raptors games to Walmart. So we kind of had intended them to say, hey, it's like you said, it's a supply chain, it's CPG and it's retail, right? But the niche markets where we found success in one companies did not coincide with the other. So, where efficiencies came is we do have a lot of internal collaboration. Where our tech guys are constantly connecting, because Shoply's knowledge is increasingly into, call it the SMB consumer-facing needs, because the SMBs are client, but our end user is a consumer. That's who we're for. And Go CXM, their client are the CPG, but also they'll work with the retailer. So there's a lot of knowledge that goes back and forth.
Makes sense. So, curiosity question: do you get paddock passes for the Grand Prix in Montreal?
So that's funny because one of our I can't talk about our, actually they're on our website. Monster Energy is on our website. We do F1 for them. So wherever you'll see Monster Energy, scan the QR code and win a snowboard, enter here, or something. It's all us. But I don't believe they gave us paddock. They I think they provide us with day passes to come, and if we want to hang around because they build this massive thing every time, but not bad. I guess we have to do more.
You have to deliver higher value, Omar. I noticed you went to McGill. Are you from Montreal originally? Because you reside in Toronto now, but kind of like.
I do. It's been 15 years. I've lived in a few places. I did live in Montreal from 1994 till 2004, where those years I did go to McGill. Prior to that, I actually was I grew up in the Middle East, in Lebanon and Italy. I have a mother who's Italian, a father's Lebanese.
Get out of here.
But I've after McGill, I lived in Paris for 2 years. I lived in Boston for 3 years, and ended up in Toronto. So I've lived in 5-6 countries. It's not sure what my identity is, but it's been exciting.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. So talk to me now about kind of like what I'll give you the context first. AI, agentic commerce, agent talking to agents, agent acting on your behalf, kind of like what, from your perspective, is the evolution of commerce? Kind of like what should we expect in 18 months, in 36 months? And maybe let's not stretch it out 5 years out, but kind of like what's coming? What are you seeing? How should SMBs, let's say, prepare themselves for the agentic commerce wave?
Yeah, hot topic. So many angles to tackle this. So I'll start off by saying something very basic, and I'll get into the agentic. There's this concept that data will magically appear and then the AI will do stuff to it, right? And it goes back to the concept of let's lay the foundation and the toolbox concept that I talked about a little earlier. You got to give a reason or a way or a path to gather that data. And I think that's an important gap, and it's old school, but it's data won't just magically appear. And if there is a company that has data, there's massive cleanup because it was not necessarily intended to fit the schema of how AI agents can cater to it. So then you're spending a year of pitching and cleaning various CRMs and this. So most important part, I think, and often forgotten, is clean data. But also reason to capture data. Give a consumer a non-intrusive, a seamless way to give you data. And up-to-date data, because you may have 5-year-old data, and so what? Second is really around, once you have that data, segmentation, AI agents have been built, and people talk about AI agents. I think that's obviously where you want to go. But I do believe that the concept of AI agent in itself is not necessarily the unicorn or the future of AI. I think AI agents are already commoditized. It came and went. It's no longer, let's invest in AI agents. That's just now the most standard thing. So AI agents are essentially a coding and an operational tool. I think where AI will win, and AI is such a broad term, so I'm going to speak in the context of my world, retail, CPG, connecting consumers, is getting, hyper localization, ultra personalization, but truly not what we've been saying for 10 years, which is, we call it what we traditionally have been calling personalization is cohort segmentation. It's
Twilio
speaking to a group of people. But it's not, Maxim and Omar will get a completely different message. And imagine times a million messages. And that is hyper personalization. But what I was getting at is not necessarily the agents, it's the LLMs. And it's I think the future of AI and the winners of it will be the data scientists, not the coders. Okay, the coders are there to execute. The data scientists are to take your ChatGPT level LLMs that are very generic by nature, but adapting what a company knows best, which is your audience, your sector, maybe your subsector. Retail is so broad. Apparel has nothing to do with, I don't know, auto parts, but they're both in retail, right? So these LLMs have to become super niche and super focused on a subsector and become, to me, that's data science. And it's doing, things that may take, a company 10 years of experience to get to know your customer truly and what gets them excited in a matter of hours, maybe, right? So that's my simple take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And like we do a lot of digital transformation and AI work, and up until I left Parkland, we were building out the customer data platform, working on exactly the things you're describing. But the other thing we were doing is implementing S/4HANA. And out of the different streams, the one stream that was always a critical dependency was the data. The data didn't exist in some cases. Parkland is in 25 countries, including the Caribbean nation. Over there, email addresses was not common, right? Civic addresses was not common. So we need to generate the data. I mean, if you look at it from an AI perspective, the most in-demand profession is data labeler. Somebody to actually go and label the data, because AI is just computation, right? Like you need to have the data to create a computation, and then you can assign different weight factors and make it more specific. But like without the data, what are you going to compute on?
That's right.
Yeah.
As our CTO, and pardon my French if I'm using a word, crap in, crap out. If you put crap into the model, the crap's going to come out. So
for sure,
again, that fundamental first step is key.
For sure. No, I mean,
and the winners again will be the data scientists, organized.
I agree, but I'm still surprised. And to people like you and I, AI just like we were doing agentic workflows back in 2015 when I was with Pamela using UiPath. Maybe you can say, well, this is structured. No, that's not exactly AI, but it's still like it's automatic workflows. But when I think about hospitality businesses, I still see hospitality businesses' websites. There's no menu online. There's no way to interact, call to reserve. There's no way to order. I'm like, how are you supposed to enable yourself for the for agentic commerce?
Absolutely, and sometimes it's also, I feel like let's go to Shoply. Probably our job to figure it out for those, if you're a restaurant in 2026 and you don't have an online menu or the ability to reserve online, I mean, you're really, you don't care, or, but it's and if you're doing, if you're there, you maybe don't even think of AI agent. But how do we bring that to the retail, to the, the SMB, to the shop, let's call it a shop, but without scaring them? And I think that's a very hard thing to build tech for, or anything actually. In school, it was always harder to write a an essay that had to have 700 words than unlimited. It's just harder, right? And the same thing with tech, and you know, some of the stuff we are looking at is AI agents to actually recommend things to you. So as a shop owner, you're saying, "Oh wow, that's a cool idea. You know what? I'll just press enter and it'll be done." So I explain it well to you. Yeah, let's do it. Enter. That's it. There's tech in that. It's not just UX UI. It's front end development. And that's also challenging.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, change management is super important in this perspective, and so like even in our company, we kind of have three different paths. Give me the information. Let me see if I can figure it out. Do it with me or do it for me. And so in some cases, people want like peace of mind. Just go and do it. Just take my problem away. And in other cases, like I want to learn so I can be better, and that's completely fine.
I like that. Do it with me or do it for me. Those are two options, and they should both be offered. Well said.
For sure. So you said during COVID, it went from 80 to 70% in retail. Kind of like, what does the future of retail look like?
I don't know. I don't think I'm that smart. And, you know, I think in an extreme world, probably unrealistic, I feel like retail can become, you know, leases could be affected. And you read about these things, right? That retailers essentially could become, if really properly digitized, showrooms. You don't need to hold stock in store. You don't need 8,000 square feet. But you still need person to person. I will always, whether I'm right or wrong, I'll always believe in the face-to-face. So how do you capitalize the face-to-face conversation to just be more efficient, more personalized, more relevant, more convenient? It's you know, it's not a direct answer. I'm giving you abstract, but you know, I don't know. I don't hold the crystal ball, but I think directionally, you know, it's these efficiency of. So landlords, I think, will be affected. You know, that's real estate, I think, will be affected. We've seen it post-COVID. We've seen offices shrink. We've seen, you know, teleconferencing just become mainstream. But I think retail will follow. I won't say teleconferencing, but a showroom, right? You become a showroom. You got people to help you. You have enough to touch and feel. I think the face is important, not just because two humans are interacting, but you're buying something you want to touch it, right? But size you don't, you know, have one size of each and then get it shipped to your house, maybe even before you get home from the store, because logistics are going through massive evolution, optimization. Real just in time has become real, right? So logistics will also be affected, landlords, but so it's what surrounds retail, and I think retail is going through that now. But I don't think the brick and mortar face-to-face concept will disappear. At least I hope not, because I don't want to live in robots.
I mentioned earlier at the top of our conversation that we produced is the Future of Restaurants report. And so we studied quite a bit in terms of talking to customers. And so there's kind of two trends that are shaping the retail and hospitality industries. One is omni-channel revenue channels. So kind of like your example, like you may have a restaurant, but the restaurant now has like CPG brand, like steak sauces, whatever it is, or they sell like takeaways. And so if you're a landlord, how do you price your lease? Are you based on kind of the physical revenue that flows through, or do you basically all? And the other trend we're actually looking at investing in the company. The other trend that we're shaping that we're seeing is people are just so freaking fed up of living in a virtual world. And we're seeing this shift away from like, I'm tired of being digital. I'm tired of being virtual. I want an analog experience, physical experiences. So there's increasing need of people saying like, I just want to be amongst humans. I just want to be somewhere where there's humans.
The sales 101 is, you don't, those movies where they say, sell me this pen, right? It's like, you sell on emotion. Emotion cannot be done, through text. It's got to be face to face. There's a saying, people won't necessarily remember what you told them, but they'll remember how you made them feel. It has to be face to face. So how do you make the world more efficient with face to face, not eliminate jobs, make those jobs even better, easier, give them cheat sheets, tools, give them all the right tools. And that's, we're humans, like we need interaction.
Omar, what lies ahead for Brand Effects? Are you going to be become the next branded hospitality and start like venture capital firm?
So funny enough, we're actually, we find hospitality to be very competitive, and we're a family office backed, no outside pressures, operators. We're not an investment company, although we invest. We build, we are operators. So, the future will come, I believe, from where our roadmap leads us, which is always customer driven. What do our customers want? What direction are we going? Do we grow through acquisition or do we build ourselves? We have a big staff, we have a big developer office, many developers. So, we can evolve to our own pace. Most importantly, we're in no rush, and it's about sustainable growth. We're not here to follow a VC type model. We're here to build great stuff and be sustainable, not rely on anyone except ourselves. And I think that's also very important. We didn't touch much on what it takes to build a company and cash flows and investments. But one thing I've learned in 20 years is if you can be self-sustaining and decide your own path, that's very important. And take your time, think long-term, solve immediate needs, think long-term, but not too far ahead because the world's changing every 6 months. So it's a hard question to ask what happens in the future. We're waiting on what our customer wants.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, with this, let's close the conversation. I mean, if you become customer obsessed, it's kind of hard not to succeed. So I love the conversation. I love connecting with you. Sounds like you're like me, or a recovering CPA, recovering CIA. It's amazing to see what you're doing. Yeah. Thank you so much, Omar.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.